Welcome back to another daily recap. Today is Friday, August 2, 2024. It's 8:07, almost 8:08 a.m. Eastern. So there's a big spread between the levels here. Like, what is this, 220 plus E-mini points or ES points? But when you had a day like yesterday, what do we have? Over 150 point range. So not all these are going to come into play most likely, but that's just what came out of the calculator. And also, I just want to point out there's this upsloping two trend lines kind of paralleled here. They've come in handy the last few days, really last week or so, for some levels. And today, the close of yesterday, 543 and some change, right around 543, happens to be right in the middle of this. So this varies. And there's such a spread here that, if price, say, comes up, they open below this, comes up into it. I mean, a base hit was really not very much, just like a quarter inch, basically, on the way I have this chart positioned here. I have this zone down here that they have been hanging around in the pre-market. They've already come down within this zone, bounced around it for a little bit, and it's important for several reasons. And if they get below this, there are some levels below to kind of catch price if they fall. But if we see more follow through from yesterday and they continue lower, then it may just be good to step back. I don't know. It all depends on what happens. Yesterday, it was worth taking some early trades. But in any case, these are the levels. We'll come back to this chart after the closing bell to examine the price action during the open session and talk about any trades that may have been triggered. We'll catch you on the other side. Another interesting day. They had follow through on the downside. And here's what they did to our levels. We're going to talk about two things. One, playing by the rules, and then we're going to talk about my trades. I was kind of all over the place today because we'll talk about that when it gets to it. First, playing by the rules. So where were they after 9:45? At 9:45, they were in between this zone. Now, I have been known to take a trade in the middle of a zone if I have a pretty good feel for what direction they're going to go. I really did not know this morning. I left this alone. So we'll talk about that when I get to my trades. But what would you have done if you were treating each level independently? So they were between the levels, and the next level they came down into was 535.88. You would have bought. And yes, they did bounce enough for 4 points, more than that actually. So that would have been technically a base hit. Then as they continued down, you would have bought a contract or two or whatever. You can afford to trade at 533.49. I'll adjust this level, add 5 cents, close enough. And that's where you would have gotten into trouble. That's where I got into trouble today. That's the operating level, just add a 5 cent buffer. So they fell down here, and before they hit the next level at 530.55, key this in because they're so spread out, you would have exceeded what I would call the maximum loss limit, which is 20 ES points. Now, I jumped out, reversed, got some on the reversal. So if you're playing by the rules, you would have had a base hit in the bag already. You would have jumped out at 20 points. Would you have bought down here? Kind of like feel like you're stepping in front of a train. Well, if you, like I said, if you were just treating each level by themselves, yes, you could have traded this one for a long trade. That would have given you a base hit. So now this level here is what I would call available for a recycle, because this was essentially a fumble. They missed this level, did not respect it, but the next time they come up into it, it's usually going to react for an equal and opposite trade. So this level, after traded here, would be done for the day. So I'm just going to make this dotted. So all the time they spend around this level, nothing doing. Here at 533, it was 444. I would just bring this down to 533.39 or something like that. Just 5 cents buffers. I mean, the market's moving around a lot today, a lot of volatility. It wouldn't really matter too much, just a penny or two here or there. But this would have been a recycle trade, perfectly valid. I didn't do any of this stuff because, like I said, that would have been your trades, and then you would have knocked this one out, and you would have had you would have ended in the red, but it wouldn't have been too bad, especially considering you started the day out earlier with a 20-point loss. So that happens occasionally, very rarely. But what I did, let's just look at the trades. I took some screenshots for a while. Then I kind of got really busy down here. I didn't really want to keep on top of taking these screenshots when I was really focusing pretty hard on the market. So I stopped taking screenshots, but I will show you what I did take. I started taking some screenshots at about 9:53. You can see the clock here. After they messed around this zone, and you can see I did not take any trades there. I was honestly thinking they would bounce out of this and go higher, because if they were going to stay above, that was my clue that they would be strong, or stronger at least. Didn't happen, of course. So they got below, and I had an order keyed in the system to buy at 533.49, as we've already talked about. And that's when I got into trouble. And I'm going to pause this right here. When I jumped out, it was 18.5 points out of the money. So with two contracts, that's over $1,800, and shorted it. And then you see me adjust this level here. I wanted to buy 4 contracts to clear me of the 2 and then be long 2, if that makes sense, before they got down to this level at 530.55. And in doing so, I was able to squeeze a little bit more out. I pulled this down to end up being $1,000. Got that. Now I'm long 2. Wanted to get some points out of a handful of points, 8 points or whatever that is. It took me a while to get this. They ultimately did give me the 4 points, the 8 points there on one contract of this 2 contract position, but I got stopped out on the second half. You'll see that in a minute. So this was just not really fun being out of the money and hoping to redeem myself at some point. But also I want to point out, I identified a couple levels down here. It proved to be the bottom of the day. And let me just pause this so I can talk through this. If anyone is interested in taking a guess of where these came from, feel free to chime in. This was basically, the only thing I'll say is in real time, this is where these levels were on 2 separate time frames of the SPY chart. That's all I'll say. And it proved to be pretty good support. They just had to find their footing. It took them a while, and that was it. So anyway, they pulled back up, got this $400 here with one contract, but let me pause this. They came down and stopped me out at the 187.50. Never hit this target up here. That would have been nice to get there first, of course. They did end up getting up here later. That was about the point where they found a top before they came back up and hit 533.49 on the other side, as we talked about before, like for a recycle trade. Anyway, so I stopped recording at some point after this was cleared out, got back down into this zone, and there's really not much more here because you can see I put a limit order here. They never got that low, ready to buy one contract. So I did a couple contracts after this, just little scalps here and there, jumping on board technically. Just essentially to jump on board and trade with the trend. I don't usually do that kind of thing, but it pulled me back out of it. So at this point, I was like negative $600 something, and I pulled back another $300 or so. Ended just 275 or something like that in the hole for the day. So yeah, not great, but it could have been a lot worse. So a little bit messy, and I definitely over traded today. I pay for that in increased commissions that really aren't necessary. Should have just played by the rules, but ultimately, I didn't lose as much. If you're playing by the rules, you would have lost a little bit more money, as we'll talk about in the tracking log. But just to show here the levels again, now that you saw what happened, and this proved to be the bottom for the day. And let's just jump over to a weekly chart since today's Friday. First, daily chart. This level here at 528.39 is a gap way back over here in June 4 that was never filled. Looks like they filled it here, did not. And they came up close again. They did not come all the way down to, this is basically the close of this day. And that's where I was hoping to buy under that little zone I identified. And they never got that low today. And the weekly, just want to see where they're at here. We already talked about the E-mini chart showing kind of the indication, at least on the monthly chart, of the possibility of them rolling over. And just want to show where they ended on the weekly chart. So not too strong, but they're down here in the neighborhood of the 20-period moving average. And one other thing, this would be true on the daily chart as well. You know where they ended here? Well, it's kind of interesting. Let me just show you. I'll show you here the Fibonacci price retracements from this low to this high was right around 50%. So there's a lot of reasons that this could have been good support. The other 2 levels that created the zone that I showed you earlier on the SPY chart, they came from 2 other time frames on the SPY chart. Over here on the log, the first one, PBR, playing by the rules, you can just, starting with level 3, you can kind of work your way down, making this a TKO according to the legend here, because 20 points is, that's the max loss limit that I use. And it's not really 2 fumbles in a row, but I mean, I don't have another way of showing that, so that's pretty bad. But gained 12 points on the other trades. And then what if you were to, like I said, strictly playing by the rules? And then what I did was quite a bit different. It was pretty sloppy. You can read through this if you want, but essentially I just kind of messed around with that area down there at the bottom and kind of pulled myself out of the hole a little bit. Most of my 2 contract trades netted me a negative 275 before commissions, but that is pretty much it for today. Thanks for tuning in to this recap. I hope you found the video helpful, and thank you for hitting that like button if you did. If you want to see more market recap videos like this, be sure to subscribe. I'd appreciate the support. Before the opening bell on Monday, I'll have new levels on the board, and we'll do this all over again. Thank you again, and have a great rest of your weekend.